So where are we at right now with regard to even who's seeing opportunity right now? Are you seeing, because it's a distressed asset in essence?
It's wildly distressed, and I think you're right. There is a lot of hurt feelings out there, people feeling burned, and people leaving that I don't think are ever going to come back.
And how much is their net worth down roughly from? And there's so many different currencies, obviously, but among the main cryptocurrencies, from the time that the scandal broke with SBF to where we are today, is it decimated?
I think the easiest way to talk about that is the net market value of all of the major cryptocurrencies. That at its peak was about $3 trillion, and today it's at less than $1 trillion. So more than $2 trillion of value has gone away.
And is there a flight to quality in my mind? Is Ethereum, Bitcoin, or is that again a misnomer because those are the ones that also grab the retail investors who then get out quickly?
Great question. No, I think that the flight to quality is a good way to put it, and I think that Bitcoin and Ether are among them. Though there are many other Ethereum competitors that I think have really proven themselves to be worth taking a closer look at. I really do think that while the fallout is being reflected in the value of the cryptocurrencies, it's more being reflected in the movement from centralized exchanges to decentralized exchanges. And also, I should throw out there hardware devices that are designed to not have you use an exchange at all. We're seeing an uptick in sales in a lot of basically USB sticks that are designed to hold your Bitcoin private keys. They have some elaborate ways to prove that you are, in fact, the owner of those private keys before you're allowed to have access to your funds. Those are the winners. I think that, in fact, the relative decrease in the price of Bitcoin specifically shows a resilience. We've only seen the asset drop by a couple $1,000s, and that's to say from like 20 down to 16, 17 on any given day. And I actually think that decrease is relatively small considering the sheer ramifications of the rest of the fallout. Which to me means that a lot of people, while they're concerned about crypto generally speaking, they're more concerned about the way that these companies were set up, and they want to see that change.
You know, prior to this, again, I don't want to make this sort of like a before and after SBF, but we did see this almost institutionalization around crypto of countries, was it Ecuador, that was kind of like going big, and then a lot of the banks talking about it in a way that was different and more accepting. Has that backtracked at all, or any of thoughts as to this, not so much democratization as really maturity, to your point, that it could be in the enterprise? Are they now like, glad I stayed away from that?
So the first part of your question, I think that we are in fact seeing some reactions against the industry, the crypto industry, we'll call it, by institutions. A lot of the institutions were investors in FTX and lost a lot of face. We're starting to learn that it seems like there was a decent amount of groupthink among those big names.
Including pension funds.
Funds, hedge funds, multi-billion-dollar companies that seem to have been group thinking with their participation in the FTX ecosystem. There was very little due diligence. A lot of people that didn't want to miss out on the golden boy image that Sam Bankman-Fried brought. But I was kind of shocked in the weeks after the fallout. Myself and our Forbes Digital Assets team were hitting the phones, interviewing C-suite and chief developers at some of the biggest financial institutions in the world as part of the vetting process for our Blockchain 50 list. And almost without exception, their projects were going on unchanged. What has changed over the years is these institutions are kind of shifting away from what we used to call enterprise blockchain or distributed ledger technology similar to blockchain, but that doesn't have a cryptocurrency, to public blockchain projects that that are faster and more private than they used to be. So the enterprise blockchain world emerged out of institutional distrust of public blockchain because they couldn't protect their customers' privacy, which they were regulatorily obliged to do. And these public blockchains were doing 7, 8, 9 transactions per second, not even close to the volume that these institutions needed. And so they built versions of blockchains without cryptocurrencies that solved both those problems. Seeing big companies like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Societe Generale doubling down on their projects that are using public blockchains that simultaneously are faster and more private than they ever used to be is really the direction that we're seeing the movement. I was surprised by that. I really was expecting to hear that our projects are being killed. Our projects are being killed.
Well, you did write about a project that was just, if not killed, delayed, which is the Australia Securities Exchange. Now, that may be a different situation.
In fact, the death of the ASX project, and I think it is dead.
Oh, 6 years.
Yeah. And that was of the enterprise blockchain type. That was of the blockchain type that these infrastructures were created to give institutions some of the same promises of network effects that blockchain provided, but in a way that they could control. Now, ironically, by holding on to that control, they lost a lot of the network effects. They
can't have it both ways.
They did. They had to pay their own cloud infrastructure costs. They had to pay a lot more out of pocket to maintain these relatively small networks, with like 5, 10, 15, 20 companies on them. And now that the privacy solution and the speed solution exists for public blockchains, these companies are sort of reevaluating a lot of that work.